breaking down the ultimate Nacht Der Untoten Iceberg. Let's go. Sniper Cabinet. On the second floor of Nacht Der Untoten, you can find this mysterious cabinet, and what's inside really depends on which version of Nacht Der Untoten you're playing. In World at War and Black Ops 1, it's going to be the scoped Kar98K for 1500 points. If you're playing on Black Ops 3, it's going to be a total scam. It's going to be the Locust for 5,000 points. But the coolest part, if you're on the iOS version, you can actually get the M2 flamethrower for only 2,000 points. Mystery Box. The Mystery Box, or the treasure chest as it's known in the files and in the loading screen. And the loading screen tip, it refers to it as the treasure chest instead of the mystery box. But the mystery box first appeared on Nacht Der Untoten, and unlike a lot of other maps, it doesn't move. It's always going to be right behind that help door. So you can hit it as many times as you want, and that sucker ain't going anywhere. Airfield multiplayer map. For a while in Zombies history, a lot of the maps were actually based on multiplayer maps, really just to save time and assets. And just because Nacht Der Untoten was first doesn't make it any special exception. The map that Nacht Der Untoten is kind of based off of is going to be Airfield. In Airfield, you have an almost one-to-one recreation of the Nacht Der Untoten building. In the bottom left of the map, you can walk through Nacht Der Untoten and explore areas that you never could in Zombies. And it definitely feels really weird exploring it and knowing that your enemies can shoot back and they're not just zombies running around. Ray gun. The ray gun was the first wonder weapon ever introduced in Call of Duty Zombies, and of course it was introduced in Nacht Der Untoten. Now originally the ray gun was never gonna appear in Zombies. It wasn't specifically made to be in the mode. It was really just a side project for its creator, Maxwell Porter. He liked the idea of bringing the retro futuristic design into Call of Duty, and so he created the ray gun. And when he heard people were working on a secret third mode in World at War, he asked if they could put the ray gun in. And they did, and everyone fell in love with it. The ray gun was so popular that they even added it as an Easter egg in the level Little Resistance. Which, if you didn't know, Little Resistance is in the campaign. And the person who did that, Jesse Snyder, was almost fired for it. Nazi Zombies. Originally, Zombies was actually called Nazi Zombies, but for obvious reasons, they decided to drop the whole Nazi part and just become zombies. Hell, I mean, at the end of the Nacht Der Untoten intro scene, it literally even says Nazi Zombies. Red barrels. Outside of Nacht Der Untoten, there are just red barrels littered all over the place, and if you shoot them, they'll explode and can take out some zombies. But really the only reason to shoot these in World at War is just because you're bored. But in Black Ops 1, they do have a purpose. In the Black Ops 1 version of Nacht Der Untoten, if you shoot 3 specific barrels, you will actually activate the musical Easter egg Undone. And in Black Ops 3, you can also activate the Undone Easter egg, but it's done a little bit different. Instead of just shooting a specific set of barrels, you gotta destroy all 28 around the map. Marine Soldiers. In the World at War version of Nacht Der Untoten, you play as 4 random Marines that have never been named. All we really knew about them was that they survived a plane crash and are now being hunted down by zombies. And for a very long time, that's all we knew. But when the official Zombies timeline dropped, we did get a little bit more information about what happened at Nacht Der Untoten. On June 4th, 1945, an Allied plane malfunctions over an airfield and crashes. German army trucks transporting the undead in Element 115 between Group 935 facilities are struck in the crash. The Marines surviving the crash hold out against the undead as long as they can. Wall buys. With Nacht Der Untoten, we also got introduced to wall buys, and you have a variety of different ones. The Kar98, the scoped Kar98, M1A1, the Thompson, trench gun, double barrel shotgun, and even the sawed-off double barrel shotgun. And one of the more expensive ones, the BAR, for 1,800 points. Or if you're feeling cheap, you can always just buy grenades for 250. Nacht Der Untoten game appearances. Nacht Der Untoten appears in a lot of different zombie games. It's in World at War, Black Ops 1, Black Ops 3, and in Call of Duty Mobile. but it also makes appearances in specific maps in other games, such as Transit, Revelations, D Machine, and Forsaken. Power Up. Nacht Der Untoten also gave us power-ups. In the original Nacht Der Untoten, you only had insta-kill, double points, nuke, and a max ammo. In later versions, you would also get the Carpenter and the Death Machine. Now, what was cool about the original Nacht Der Untoten is it actually had a countdown for how much time, like insta-kills and double points, had left. Instead of it just blinking to let you know, it actually had a countdown, which was pretty helpful. The Help Door. The Help Door is one of the 2 possible barricades that you can buy and spawn, and universally it's pretty much agreed that this is the only door you need to open. Everyone seems to have come to the consensus that the staircase, just don't even go over there, just open the Help Door. Hard Landing Campaign Level. So remember how I said zombie maps are usually based off multiplayer maps? Well, multiplayer maps were usually based off campaign. And Nacht Der Untoten's entire trilogy is no exception. It was all based off of Hard Landing. In a specific part of that mission, you literally come across Nacht Der Untoten. The Japanese are held out in it, and you have to assault it and take them all out. Now, it's not a one-for-one recreation of Nacht Der Untoten like Airfield, but it's still very, very similar. Thunder Gun. The Thunder Gun is the wonder weapon of choice for Nacht Der Untoten. Well, not the World at War version, because the Thunder Gun was not even invented yet. It makes an appearance in the Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 3 version of Nacht Der Untoten. And considering how small this map is, I think the Thunder Gun was a pretty excellent choice. Though it would have been pretty cool to see the flamethrower return. Mule Kick availability. So you should definitely know that World at War Nacht Der Untoten did not have Mule Kick, considering it wouldn't be invented until the next game on the final map. But the Black Ops 1 version of Nacht Der Untoten does have Mule Kick, only after the final DLC. After that, it would be patched into all of the maps. So the original Black Ops 1 Nacht Der Untoten never had any perks, and wouldn't until Moon. And of course, the Black Ops 3 version kind of follows that tradition. You do have Mule Kick, but you also have the Wonder Fizz. Invincibility glitch. World at War Nacht Der Untoten had plenty of invincibility glitches. Whether you're jumping and going prone in certain locations so the zombies can't get to you, or going prone under the grenades and getting the classic can't stand here, and the zombies will just basically pile up in front of you, or my personal favorite, the ledge on the staircase. You just hop up here and the zombies couldn't swipe at you. Now, majority of the invincibility glitches did get patched, but there are still a few out there. So if you feel like reliving some childhood memories of trying to get into a glitch for a couple hours, and then ultimately dying because you don't have any ammo, then knock yourself out. Music radio. In the help room right next to the mystery box, you can find a radio on a table. And if you knife it or shoot at it, it's going to start playing various songs from the game. If you're in World at War, you're going to get a lot of very different campaign songs. And if you're in Black Ops 1, you'll get some from the campaign, but also some from Dead Ops Arcade. And in Black Ops 3, it's just going to play a complete variety of songs from zombies. B-17 Flying Fortress. This is the plane that you can find outside of the map. And like I said earlier, it's also the plane that went down that was carrying the Marines. And it's the same one that you can see in the Nacht Der Untoten intro scene. Ultimus Crew. The Ultimus Crew is the gang we play as from Shinonuma all the way to Moon. And it consists of Dempsey, Takeo, Nikolai, and Richtofen. In the original World at War Nacht Der Untoten, we play as the Marine soldiers, but in the Black Ops 1 and the Black Ops 3 version, we play as the Ultimus Crew, and we'll talk about why later. Jet Gun Handle Brake Part. Transit does have its own version of Nacht Der Untoten. Heading through the cornfield, we can eventually come across it, and you will probably need to come here at some point in time because there are two things in here. Number one, the radio for the nav table can spawn here. And number 2, you're going to need a part for the jet gun, the handbrake, which will definitely spawn here. So if you're trying to do the Easter egg or you want the wonder weapon, you will definitely be coming here at some point. Limited zombie intelligence. In World at War Nacht Der Untoten, the zombies were very primitive. If you were at the window, they wouldn't even attack you through the window if there were boards up. So in like a weird roundabout way, Nacht Der Untoten made repairing windows pretty reliable, considering the zombies wouldn't be able to hit you through them. Now eventually this would get changed and zombies could definitely swipe you through windows, but in World at War Nacht Der Untoten, the zombies are pretty dumb, so you're safe. Zombie spawn point. I'm not 100% sure what this one's talking about, but I'm going to take an educated guess. In the help room or the mystery box room, there are 3 barriers. 2 windows and 1 coming from the wall. Now interestingly enough, the zombies coming through the wall will not spawn until round 5. So if at any point in the first 4 rounds you enter this room, no zombies will spawn through this. And they will only start tearing it down at round 5. Now unfortunately, this is only in World at War. In Black Ops 1 and 3, the zombies they'll come get your ass. Salvation lies ahead and you must ascend from darkness. I'm just going to go ahead and combine both of these into one because it's basically the same explanation. They're just creepy wall writings to help create atmosphere. They really don't mean anything at this point. At this point with zombies and Nacht Der Untoten, the zombie storyline has yet to be made. So it seems like these wall writings don't really mean anything. And in future maps, they definitely hint at certain things. But the closest that I could come up with is Salvation Lies Ahead, maybe is pointing you to the mystery box or some other wall weapon. Flamethrower and cabinet. We talked about it earlier, how instead of the scoped Kar 98 or the Locust, on the iOS version you had the M2 flamethrower. And this is kind of a big deal, considering the flamethrower is essentially the wonder weapon of the map. If your end goal is high rounds, you need the flamethrower, because it kind of does an infinite amount of damage, because you have unlimited ammo. You don't ever have to get a max ammo, you just have to wait for it to basically cool off and then you can continue using it. And because there's no other actual wonder weapon besides the ray gun, man, that thing will start pooping out around the 30s to 40s, you need something to deal damage. So the fact that the flamethrower was actually available just off the wall, easily to get in the iOS version, is pretty important. If only they would have put the flamethrower in the cabinet in the other maps, or if only they would have just brought the flamethrower back. 24 zombie limit. In the World at War version of Nacht Der Untoten, only 24 zombies will spawn per round. Usually it's only 24 zombies can spawn in at one time. But in a couple World at War maps, it's only 24 per round, and this continued to be a thing all the way until Derice. Opel Blitz Truck. This is the name of the actual trucks in Nacht Der Untoten, and if you didn't know, yes, you can blow them up. But they are Opel Blitz trucks, which were used by Germany from 1930 to around the 1970s, and were used in World War II. Now they're not as good as, Ford and General Motors or anything, but they got a pretty cool design. And another little interesting fact, even though a lot of movies and shows and games will have you believe that the Germans had lots of trucks and everything, majority of their army was using horses and their own 2 feet. Nox opening cinematic. Black Ops 4 Absent. Black Ops 4 was actually the first zombie game to not include Nacht Der Untoten. Of course it was in World at War, it got remastered for Black Ops 1, it made an appearance in Black Ops 2 Transit, and even made a comeback as its own map in Black Ops 3 and also in Revelations. But Black Ops 4 sadly said 9. The Prototype. Prototype is the name of Nacht Der Untoten in the game files. In World at War, it's Nazi_zombie prototype. In Black Ops 1, it's zombie_COD5 prototype, and in Black Ops 2 on Transit, it is still referred to as prototype. Now for World at War, the name prototype obviously makes a lot of sense because it was the first zombies map ever. They were just kind of experimenting with the whole zombies game mode, but later down this list, there are some theories about the name prototype and having to do with Transit. Black Ops loading screen. For the Black Ops 1 version of Nacht Der Untoten, we got a different loading screen, and this is still an unsolved mystery. No one really knows what is going on in this image. In this image, you can see a man standing alone, then what looks to be presenting something to a group of people or scientists, followed by silence and what appears to be a line of either zombies or people under some sort of brainwashing. We can also see someone in a warehouse of some sorts, with the bottom image being people seemingly being actively brainwashed, and with the final image a man stepping out of a teleporter. And all through this we see the years 1964, 1959, and 1943. And the fact that this is the loading screen for Nacht Der Untoten hasn't helped any with the theories whatsoever. Now there are plenty of theories that I have seen. One is that it's a bunch of Soviet scientists experimenting with teleportation and 115 and trying to create more sleeper agents, kind of like Alex Mason. And to kind of jump off of that theory, it's someone from the Soviet Union experimenting with time travel and is trying to go back to a very specific time in 1943. Probably one of the more popular ones is that this is just a cut storyline thread. Eventually, Treyarch wanted to experiment and play more off of this, but the community never latched onto it, so they just abandoned it. We do know that Treyarch often does this. They'll drop hints to certain stories, and if the community never gravitates towards it, they just kind of drop it and pretend it never happened. I've also seen people say that this has a lot to do with the map 5, and that the man showed in here is actually Yuri. And this would show a little bit of his story about being driven mad by Samantha, activating the Gersh device, and creating a zombie army all to do Samantha's bidding. But no matter which theory you subscribe to, the OG Nacht Der Untoten loading screen is still a mystery. Zombie Richthofen. Did you know the first ever appearance of Zombie Richthofen was actually in the Call of Duty Zombies app on Nacht Der Untoten? Upon loading the app up, you will be greeted with Richthofen saying, "Hey you, American, wake up, wake up. Quick, look over here to your right. That's it, now stretch your legs. Schnell, schnell. Why are you standing around? Get your legs moving and come over here when you're ready. Verdammt, you're only a rookie." Okay, listen to me. We'll have to lay aside our differences, and quickly, they are coming. You'll need a bigger gun if you're to survive this hell. Go and buy a rifle from the chalk outline to your left. Get back over here, I think I can hear something. Right on cue, here comes some of the Hollenschwein. Shoot them. Verdammt, rookie. Don't you remember your training? Aim down the sights if you plan to hit anything. You can use your hand grenade to take out multiple opponents. Change to your pistol. It is often quicker than reloading. Of course they included that. Double tap the ammo icon to change weapon. Now kill these two Untoten. I do not feel so good, my rookie friend. I fear I will not be around for long. You must protect yourself as best you can. Attach some planks to this window to make a barricade. Also, don't forget, you can always use your knife if they get too close to you. 9! Wait! 9! 9! 9! Here! It's happening! And then after that, Richthofen becomes a zombie. I was going to do that in like a German accent, but I thought I would spare you guys the awful voice acting. But after all that hullabaloo, Richthofen is now a zombie, and you have to kill him. Now, this is on Nacht Der Untoten, but it's technically, I guess, considered the tutorial level, where in the description it says, learn the basics with a little help from an old friend, Dr. Richthofen, the Butcher. An incurable sociopath, he sees no moral distinction between natural death and murder, which is a nice little subtle nod to his World at War bio. Beating campaign unlocks Nacht. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Once you beat the World at War campaign, you were surprised with the zombies game mode, and you would be thrown directly into Nacht Der Untoten. Originally, the game mode was meant to just be an Easter egg for beating campaign, but something so small like that ended up becoming this giant game mode that it is today. Nazi zombies references removed from Black Ops 3. This is just talking about Treyarch trying to completely remove anything Nazi from zombies. And not just Nacht Der Untoten, they did this with a lot of other maps as well. And the reason for this is obvious, to just make more money. It's probably easier to market and sell things that doesn't have the word Nazi in it. PPSH and Type 100 availability. Despite being one of the most popular guns in all of Call of Duty Zombies history, the PPSH isn't in that many maps. It was never on World at War Nacht Der Untoten, and neither was the Type 100. Those would come later on. And even though I think the Type 100 is criminally underrated, the PPSH is by far one of the greatest guns we've ever seen. And it still holds a legacy to this day, even though it was only on a handful of maps. Why is the moon so big? In case you couldn't tell, if you're playing Nacht Der Untoten on really any version, the moon looks huge. Naturally, this spawned countless theories about where exactly does Nacht Der Untoten take place, and is it even on Earth? Spoiler alert, it is on Earth. The reason the moon is big is purely for stylistic choice. It helped create the atmosphere that they were going for in Nacht Der Untoten, and that's really it. That's the only reason. There's no hidden meaning behind it. Nacht originally designed as a tower defense game mode. Yes, Nacht Der Untoten and Call of Duty Zombies as a whole was originally designed and based off of a tower defense style game. But we can go even farther back than that. The original idea for the end sequence of World at War would have placed you in a bunker, where you very soon would have realized that you were a German soldier on the opposite side of the Normandy landings. So instead of storming the beaches of Normandy, you would have been defending them on the other side, only for you to eventually get overrun and killed. But because people didn't really like the idea of you playing as a German soldier, this idea never went anywhere. Later on, they were experimenting with some AI and the level Little Resistance, when someone said that the Japanese soldiers that looked dazed after getting hit by a rocket strike looked like zombies, and this planted the seed. Eventually, when they had to start creating extra content for World at War, they started talking about tower defense style games. At the time, tower defense games, for example Bloons Tower Defense, were extremely popular. And the fact that it not only was popular, but would also be fairly easy to do, grew on everyone really quick. One game that did come up was called The Last Stand, which was a flash game where you play as a survivor fighting off zombies. Zombies run towards you, tear down large barricades, and you kill them and build them back up. And that's where the idea of zombie Nazis, as it was called, came to be. They took the idea of the game The Last Stand and thought to improve on it in a lot of different ways. Now originally the idea of zombie Nazis never really took on. They said it was too risky and too much work. But the guys that really loved the idea said fuck it and decided to go off and make their own prototype. And once the prototype was finished, they showed it around and everyone immediately fell in love with it. And so that's how the game mode of zombies came to be, all because of a little flash game called The Last Stand. And bonus tip, because why not, the magic chest, or the mystery box, or the treasure chest as people call it, was inspired by the drops from Mario Kart, and a trip to Las Vegas. Radio Silence Achievement. Yeah, even the app version did have achievements, and one of them is Radio Silence, where all you have to do is hit the radio and activate it, and you get the achievement. Pretty easy if you ask me. Thompson Price Strong. This is one of my favorite little just random facts about Nacht Der Untoten. If you enter the help room and you go up to the Thompson, you will see that it is actually priced at 1,500 points. But if you were to purchase it, it only costs 1,200, saving you those extra 300 crucial points that could buy you the Car 98 or some more grenades. Or you could just save and hit the box. Dual-wield Makarovs. One set of guns that was advertised for Nacht Der Untoten but was never implemented was the Makarovs. In Black Ops 1 leading up to Resurrection, which was the final DLC that included Moon and all of the World at War zombie maps, in one of the promotional images for Nacht Der Untoten, or Night, you see a man shooting dual-wield Makarovs, which you can't get in the map. Ghost Whispers in Black Ops 2. In the Black Ops 2 transit version of Nacht Der Untoten, if you just walk around, you can hear some eerie ghost whispering. that's really interesting because you can kind of hear the same thing in the original Nacht Der Untoten. So whether they were just doing this to keep Nacht Der Untoten feeling like Nacht Der Untoten, or whether they are trying to hit at something much larger, that we may never know. But they still did a pretty good job in the transit version of keeping the OG feel alive and well. Red antennas. I'm assuming this is talking about the World at War version of Nacht Der Untoten, and the red antennas that are on top of the bunker. Now, they don't do anything and are simply just there for aesthetics. But that did not stop the community back in the day from creating some insane theories around them. One theory that I vaguely remember is that the antennas were sending out an SOS signal, and that signal was what was attracting all of the zombies. Some of the other more insane theories had to revolve around a potential Easter egg. People thought that if you shoot the antennas at certain times or in a certain way, or lob grenades at them, that you would unlock a super duper secret Easter egg. Naturally, nothing happened. And lastly, one thing people actually believed back in, 2008-9, is that these red antennas were very similar to aircraft marker beacons, and they thought that Nacht Der Untoten was an abandoned Luftwaffe emergency airfield, and those beacons were to help with incoming planes, hence the crashed plane on the outside of the map. Again, there wasn't really too much lore to go on with back in Nacht Der Untoten, so you made do with what you had. Exploding zombie. I'm not 100% on this one. It either means the zombies that explode when you shoot the barrels and they go flying, or the fact that OG World at War zombies was way more gorier, and zombies would lose a lot of limbs and such, thus look like they are exploding. If you happen to know more about this one, please let me know in the comments, but that's what I think it's referring to. iOS Wolfhounds. This is a very interesting theory that even I subscribed to back in the day. So the iOS game came out in 2009, and by then World at War had already been out for a year. And thus in the actual World at War Zombies game, we had already experienced hellhounds. Well, in the iOS Nacht Der Untoten version, there was a rather unique sound that you would only hear on the app. So with that sound sounding like a wolf, and the fact that we had already seen hellhounds and zombies, this created a theory that we could somehow unlock or would find wolfhounds. Now, of course, nothing ever came from this, but it was still a pretty common theory. Nacht Der Untoten Abandonment Anxiety. This is the exact feeling that Treyarch wanted you to experience when playing Nacht Der Untoten. And one of the reasons for this is because it's the exact opposite of campaign. One thing that was very common with a lot of Call of Duty games is the feeling that you're invincible and you always have allies. And that when things go wrong, no matter what, everyone will live to see the next day. And with Nacht Der Untoten, they wanted to give you kind of the complete opposite feeling of that. Hence you get the atmosphere and the vibe of being the only one that's here. No one's gonna come save you. You're all alone. Rook. Rook is actually the name of the playable character that you play as in the iOS version of Zombies. He's the one that Richtofen shows how to fight before Richtofen becomes a zombie. And he would also make a follow-up appearance in the Black Ops Zombies app, where Dempsey shows him how to fight, very similar to Richtofen. But unfortunately, Rook eventually turns into a zombie, and Dempsey has to kill him. Dr. Monty Radio. In Black Ops 3, Dr. Monty has a radio in which he talks about Nacht Der Untoten, the OG version. And in it, he kind of breaks the fourth wall a little bit and gives a little bit more explanations for Nacht Der Untoten.
Nacht Der Untoten. That translates as Night of the Dead. I learned that tonight. Been trying to scrub up on my German, you see. Anyway, it happened in an old concrete building on an airfield somewhere. I don't know where. I remember it being really small, simple by today's standards. I think there was a fog. Not a lot of it, certainly not coming into the building itself. You know what I just realized? You weren't even there. At least not at first. It was some other random, forgettable soldiers that had the misfortune to live through that horrible night, or Nacht, as it was actually known. Yeah, I speak German now.
Cut from Call of Duty Mobile. When Call of Duty Mobile first dropped, it did include zombies, and was originally going to include Nacht Der Untoten, before getting cut and replaced with Shin Onuma. Now, it was always intended for Nacht Der Untoten to make a comeback, but unfortunately, Call of Duty Mobile ended up axing the zombies part of the game. They saw it as not being worth their time because it just wasn't doing as good as multiplayer. iOS Nacht Forest. So in the regular version of Nacht Der Untoten, there really isn't too big of a forest surrounding it. A lot of it is just open field. But in the iOS version, there is a noticeable difference. The forest is much closer, and there's way more trees. Now, of course, this wasn't some Easter egg or anything like that. It's purely just so you don't have to render and draw out a bunch of extra stuff. But that never stops people from theorizing all sorts of crazy things, that this isn't the same Nacht Der Untoten, or that we're somewhere completely new. But the real reason is just because you had to make it run on 2009 iPhone hardware. The plane crash caused the outbreak. Originally in Nacht Der Untoten's run, no one really knew what caused the zombies to be there. It seemed rather random. But eventually, with the zombies timeline, we would learn the cause. An Allied plane that malfunctioned and crashed into the airfield, killing multiple German soldiers and destroying trucks that had been transporting Element 115. Real life Nacht Der Untoten. So believe it or not, Nacht Der Untoten does exist in real life. And unlike its zombies counterpart, it has nothing to do with Germany. Nacht Der Untoten actually has Japanese ties. Nacht Der Untoten is based off a real Japanese bunker from World War II on Peleliu Island. In fact, if you've ever seen HBO's The Pacific, which I highly recommend, it's one of my favorite shows of all time, in the airfield scene, you can actually see Nacht Der Untoten. I'm not sure how much of this I can play for you because, copyright. So right now I'm just trying to talk and stall out time so I can make sure I show you as much as I can without the gods of YouTube smiting me down. Nacht was almost cancelled. So remember how we talked about the origins, how it was the German bunker and then transitioned to a tower defense game? Well, throughout all of this, when the concept of zombie Nazis was being floated around, the higher-ups never really liked it. Even after people in the studio started praising it, they were really skeptical if they should even include it. Because at the time of World at War, believe it or not, Call of Duty was kind of meant to be serious, especially World at War. And the thought of including zombies, magical mystery boxes, power-ups, the higher-ups feared that it really wouldn't sit too right with the game's tone. Eventually, they ultimately conceded and decided to put the game in, but only as an Easter egg for beating the campaign. They did no marketing or anything to promote it. It was all a secret until you got it. Cyborg Rising. Cyborg Rising is a game mode that released in Call of Duty Online, the Chinese free-to-play Call of Duty game. And with it, they got introduced to cybernetic zombies. And one of the maps was inspired by Nacht Der Untoten, called Outpost. And instead of being a World War II gritty, terrifying map, it was a futuristic daytime map. Instead of using points to buy everything, you used the battery system, and the Outpost, as it's called, didn't have any wall weapons. It only had the mystery box. And this map, Outpost, feels nothing like Nacht Der Untoten. It may be laid out very similar, but the overall vibe and tone just feels wrong. Who's the character in the cutscene? So we all know the Nacht Der Untoten cutscene. I've probably showed you a million times in this video so far. The one that survived the plane crash and is trying to regain consciousness while a zombie sprints at him. And despite being one of the most famous characters ever in zombies history, they're never named or shown. We really don't even know their fate. Was this character one of the 4 that survived and was able to hold out in the bunker? Or was this just one of the people on the plane that didn't make it? The answers to these questions we'll probably never know. But it's thanks to this random John Doe that we have one of the most iconic intro scenes ever made. Nacht Der Untoten teleported to Green Run. This is a theory that would help explain why Nacht Der Untoten is in transit. And surprise, surprise, we still to this day don't know that answer. It's still a mystery. Well, the real answer is it was going to be explained in Black Ops 2, but the storyline they wanted to go with ultimately never happened, and this was just a dead end. But that still hasn't stopped people from theorizing on why exactly it's there. Some people like to theorize that the US built a recreation of Nacht Der Untoten purely for testing purposes. They had all this useful info from the Nazis and they wanted to recreate most of it and see what they could do. Another popular theory is that it was teleported there. Due to some 115 shenanigans, temporal displacement, whatever you want to call it, for some reason it got teleported all the way to the US. And actually, not too long ago, a bunch of leaked information about Black Ops 2 came out, and in it, we actually got a little bit of info about Nacht Der Untoten. In it, they were wanting to have new characters, with one of them possibly being Sam. And the OG characters would be dead in here, and you would have to free them somehow to start their quest in World at War. Now, I'm assuming this means like the Ultimus crew and not the 4 Marines, but it could also mean the 4 Marines. Those were the OG guys. Those are the first 4 we ever played as. But I'm assuming it means Dempsey, Takeo, Richtofen, and Nikolai. So it seems like originally this was set in transit for a reason. It was going to be here, not just as a little cool callback, but for a very specific reason. But unfortunately, with how Black Ops 2 ended up going and the numerous things that were cut and all the storyline changes, we never really got the answer as to why Nacht was here. And as of today, all we can really guess is that it got teleported there for some reason. Cut from Cold War. So we all know Nacht Der Untoten is in Cold War, sort of. It's in the map D Machine. But it appears that there is a little piece of cut content where originally, if you beat the game's main quest, you could load into a separate match of just straight Nacht Der Untoten. But it seems like this would eventually go on to be cut. The remastered map started the new cycle. This, I think, is talking about the Black Ops 3 Nacht Der Untoten and that one Dr. Monty radio. In that radio, Dr. Monty says, "You weren't even there. At least not at first. It was some other random unfortunate soldiers that had the misfortune to live through that horrible night." So this theory basically states that the events of Nacht Der Untoten are what start off the entire zombie storyline and signify the beginning of a new loop. The entire storyline is in a giant loop, so later iterations of this cycle would start to deviate, and Ultimus, Richtofen, Dempsey, Takeo, and Nikolai would eventually start to make their way to Nacht Der Untoten, and would instead replace the Marines that were actually there. Now, this area of the storyline is still very foggy and we don't know the exact details. Even after all these years, this is still kind of a mystery. Samantha Dolls. In the Black Ops 3 Nacht Der Untoten, there is another musical Easter egg that will play Samantha's lullaby and spawn you in a free max ammo. First thing you have to do is interact with 4 buttons around the map. One is near the bottom of the steps in the mystery box room under the shelf. Another one is going to be up the spiral stairs and spawn right on the ceiling. The next one can be found on a wall next to Mulekik, and the final one is across from the Argus wallby. Once that happens, you want to interact with the Samantha doll that will appear in front of the RK5 wallby, and once done, random Samantha dolls will appear around the map, followed by this music number. And once you find all the dolls, you want to go back to the original Samantha doll and interact with it again. Once done, a skeleton hand will appear and then disappear, and you will be rewarded with a max ammo and Samantha's lullaby. The first outbreak. Many years ago, on Treyarch's official website, there was a specific line about Nacht Der Untoten. On the mysterious radio transmission intel page, it said, "Ever since the second outbreak at Nacht Der Untoten, troops have been noticing strange radio transmissions and broadcasts taking place in the dead of the night." But what exactly does this mean? What was the first outbreak? Well, there really isn't any explanation. It seems like this was just the first attempt to kind of craft a storyline, one that they never ended up following through and ended up going in a different direction. I still wish they would eventually have incorporated this as a little Easter egg in some way, shape, or form, but they have not. Original Mystery Box Song. This is talking about the full Mystery Box jingle. Originally in the World at War campaign and the mission Ring of Steel, this full jingle was supposed to appear, but it seems they never actually used it, and ended up just editing the jingle and turning it into the Mystery Box song. So here is the Mystery Box song that we all know and love. And here is the full thing. Now I might get roasted for this, but I kind of like the full thing. The Mystery Box that we all know is more happy-go-lucky feeling, and the full thing felt a lot creepier. And I'm not gonna lie, I think I would have preferred the creepier version than the one we have. Not saying the one we have isn't iconic and great, but there's something about that creepy one that I like. And also a bonus fact, because while I was researching into this, I kept seeing a lot of people claim that the Mystery Box song is actually like the Croatian 1996 EAS alarm, which just isn't true. One, it just sounds absolutely absurd that they would make an emergency alarm this jingle. That's just one, dumb. And two, there's an entire section of trolling on the internet where people just upload random music clips and claim it was insert country's alarm. And I saw a alarming amount of people that were fooled by this. So if you see that factoid, just know that you're getting trolled. Draken Unobtainable from Mystery Box. In the Black Ops 3 version of Nacht Der Untoten, the Draken isn't available, which I never thought about until now. Yeah, I don't remember ever getting it. It's on all the other Zombie Chronicle maps, but for some reason, they said Nacht Der Untoten doesn't get it. Alternate loading screen. In the Zombies comics, we got a bunch of alternate loading screens, and one of them was for Nacht Der Untoten. Now, the alternate loading screen looks awfully similar to the original, except there are some changes here and there. And if you pay close enough attention, you can actually tell that this loading screen is all about Mob of the Dead. Instead of zombies being brainwashed, we have prisoners walking past cells. Instead of a guy standing in a warehouse, it's a guy standing in prison. And if you've ever played Blood of the Dead, you will probably know what those pods are. So instead of going back and rewriting the Nacht Der Untoten loading screen to make any sense, they kind of just took it and used it to help explain Mob of the Dead. That is going to be the end of the video. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and hype the video if you get the chance. That's all I got for you. Leave.